The scandalous affair that shook a kingdom, the forbidden love of Edward VIII and Wallis Simpson. London, 1930s, an era of glitz, power, and tradition. But behind the palace walls, a love story was unfolding, one so scandalous it would shake the very foundation of the British monarchy. Edward, the Prince of Wales, had always been a rebel. Unlike the stiff, duty-bound royals before him, he was charming, carefree, and dangerously reckless. Women adored him, the aristocracy indulged him, and when he ascended the throne as King Edward VIII, the world expected him to reign with power and poise. But then came Wallis Simpson. She was everything a future queen should not be: American, twice divorced, and utterly magnetic. Society women whispered about her in hushed voices, their pearl necklaces clinking as they gossiped. She had a sharp wit, a dazzling presence, and a past that made her entirely off-limits. And yet, Edward was obsessed. They met in 1931, introduced at a party, and for Wallis, the prince was simply another aristocrat, wealthy, charming, and entirely unattainable. But Edward saw something different. She was unlike any woman he had ever met. She didn't fawn over him, didn't melt at his feet. She challenged him, teased him, and treated him like a man, not a king. That was all it took. By the time he was crowned in 1936, their love affair was unstoppable. He ignored the warnings, the political advisors, the desperate pleas of his family. He showered Wallis with jewels, brought her to royal events, and whispered in her ear at grand banquets while dignitaries watched in shock. The British public was outraged. The monarchy had rules, and a king was not supposed to marry a divorcée, especially not one with 2 living ex-husbands. The government threatened crisis. The Church of England refused to accept her as queen. The tabloids ran stories painting Wallis as a manipulative temptress, a woman who had bewitched the king with her charm. But Edward didn't care. In a historic and unprecedented move, he made a choice that no king had made before. On December 11, 1936, after reigning for less than a year, Edward VIII abdicated the throne. For love.
I have found it impossible to carry the heavy burden of responsibility and to discharge my duties as king as I would wish to do without the help and support of the woman I love, he declared in a radio broadcast, his voice steady but laced with emotion.
And just like that, he was no longer king. Wallis, still married at the time, fled to France in exile. The scandal had consumed them both. When her divorce was finalized, Edward, now simply the Duke of Windsor, married her in a quiet ceremony in 1937. Not a single member of the royal family attended. They spent the rest of their lives wandering through Europe, living in luxury but forever shunned. Wallis never became queen. Edward never returned to the throne. And yet, until his dying breath, he never regretted his choice. He had given up a crown, a kingdom, an empire, for one woman. Some called it foolishness. Others, the greatest love story of all time. But one thing is certain: Edward VIII was not a man who ruled by duty. He ruled by love. And love, as history tells us, always demands a price. Thank you for watching. I appreciate your time and support. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories. See you next time.